now, firefighters are taking down the ladders and rolling up the hoses. But earlier in the night, when they pulled up, there were flames coming out of the side of the building. Firefighters say it was one of the scarier moments because when you pull up to a building and you see children and mothers hanging off the side of the fire escape, smoke swirling around them, they said that's scary, scary stuff. They got up there, they got the ladders up, and they said nobody got hurt.
The fire escape, there was 3 or 4 people hanging off the fire escape. They couldn't get off. They were just on the fire escapes. I had people hanging in the fire escapes at the rear of the building, and on this side of the building, we had a bunch of people on that fire escape.
About 50 people were displaced inside this building. However, firefighters say there's good news tonight. It looks like everybody will be allowed to go back in except the one unit where the fire was in. They said that's good luck to them tonight. I'm Bob Wilson on the scene of Bridgeport, News 8.
Here's what the tags look like. Now, Seattle has a law, and why do you think they brought me up to Seattle? Because they were proactive, or did 3 guys fall to the ground on a fire escape that was lag bolted into a wood structure? So when we get there, they had a system there that wasn't one of the greatest, and you could literally self-test your own fire escape. So they came in, we gave them the confidence test, we gave them the training, and guess what they came up with? And they have a tagging system. Every fire escape that is certified by a structural engineer has a white tag on it, just like an elevator. Permanently affixed to the fire escape or next to the building in a permanent nature so that it's 7 to 10 feet off the ground. You have to be able to read it, and you have to read when the next inspection is going to be, who the engineer was, and who the vendor was that did the work. So you don't have to wonder whether or not back at the office, this fire escape has a tag. You walk by it every year, and even the tenants look, hey, this thing was like, needs a re-inspection, just like an elevator. How many tenants tell the maintenance company or the management company that their elevator's out? So you need something that lets the people know. And if the fire escape is bad, you got a yellow one on it. If the fire escape is dangerous, you got a red on it. Now, we are telling you that it took 75 years to ignore this bastard child of egress. You're not going to fix this overnight. What we're suggesting is that you just get into a point where you're going to identify all the fire escapes in your city only. You guys are going to get tags that have your city information here, and you only put up reds and yellows. You have a program where all fire escapes in your city must be tagged like an elevator. That's all. You just need a tag. And this is nothing but a safety tag for the safety of the tenants and the safety of the firemen who are going to use it until such time that all the fire escapes get certified, which could take 5 years. Because you got court, absentee landlords, you name it. But in the middle of the night, when you got a firefighter showing up in a smoky situation, and the gray-haired captains have been telling him, in case of fire, never get on a fire escape, never get on a fire escape. And he gets there and there's a white tag on it. Guess what he can do? Just jump on it. Not go grab the ladder, not wait for the apparatus to get him to the 3rd floor. Just jump on it. But if he gets there and he's got yellows and reds, what's he got? He's got taxi meters on them that somebody in the city is taking care of this situation. The guy's either getting dragged through court or whatever because it's sitting there with a tag that can't be removed. Now, we were teaching a class, and in the class was a state building inspector. And the state building inspector was talking about what can be done to help you guys sort of get this under control when it comes to what, do we need to change the law? Do we need, he goes, it's very simple here in Massachusetts. You can't just go change codes the way you want without affecting the code and having some blowback. He goes, but you can have departmental procedures as a standard. So we came up from that class working with a state official. We said, okay, what can we say? He goes, you got to keep it generic. You can't tell them what to do or how to do it, but you can tell them more or less how you guys would like it done. So let's open it up to this page. I'll read it along. This is a sample because, and here we can send this to you, and this is either in PDF or in Word. You can modify it any way you want, get rid of all the pictures. But what we do is, if we do it for you, we put your website up here, your city website. We put your name and phone number over here as a contact. We don't have any of our information on here. And even if you don't like the National Fire Escape Association.org, you just click it and you delete it. Okay, get it out of there. And down here is the building code. Okay, so let's talk about the building code. So let me tell you, if you're an inspector, so if you have these, you can just send these out. Unless you wrote a violation, someone says, what do I do? You send them one of these, either electronically or they have a bunch of them printed out on your desk, and you hand it to somebody who just got a violation. Now, let me tell you what the person has to do. And this procedures and guidelines is used nationwide, ready? So if for inspections, which is what you're calling for as soon as you write a violation, this is what you want from a structural engineer or others acceptable to you. In layman's terms, the city official is looking for a registered structural engineer or others qualified and acceptable by the fire or the code official to do a critical examination in lieu of a live load test. Criteria submitted or discussed prior to the inspection, meaning, guess who's going to call you before they go inspect this fire escape you wrote a violation on? This structural engineer. And issues written verification and certification that all the connections are free of internal rust or rot, as well as all original hardware, which is the square heads or rivets, bolts or rivets, are reinforced, so I can keep beautiful 50, 75-year-old rivets. I can keep them if I back them up with another bolt somewhere nearby, because they are 50 to 75 years old. So if somebody's in love with their 50 to 75-year-old bolts and rivets, keep them, but I need a backup bolt behind it somewhere near it. Or replaced in lieu of a live load test. Well, sometimes for me to drill a hole, it takes me 7 minutes. It takes me 3 minutes to knock out a square head bolt and put a new bolt in there in a perfectly good connection. Not a bad one, perfectly good connection. It takes me 2 minutes with an impact gun or with a cutting disc to get that square bolt or that rivet out. So whatever's cheaper for the client. You think 2 minutes or 7 minutes is cheaper for the client. So all supports, through bolts or cemented into the wall, must be verified in lieu of a live load test. So this engineer now has to verify the connection into the wall, and he can do that. He comes over here, if there's a sheetrock, he can open up a little hole, and from that Home Depot snake that you buy that has a little camera, what's he do through that little half-inch hole? He sticks it in there, and he goes to verify the plate that's inside all your wood structures. Is that verification enough for you? Because that thing takes pictures. Is that verified? That thing inside is good? Or if it's not verifiable, he must verify from the outside, as it says in here. A fire escape confidence test and tag must be submitted to if the fire escape passes. So that confidence test we have in here must be given, and the thing must be tagged.
If you're doing a class here in the MBCIA, we have Gino back here with us. This is we actually did a class with him probably 2 months ago, and these are some an actual fire escape we took off a building, and we actually saved the lower part and the upper part. This is the upper part of the fire escape. This is the lower part that was buried in the ground. And we're actually using this to show some of the pieces and how long it takes to rust, some of the gussets, and just how long it takes. I don't know if you can see in here, Gene, how much it eaten inside. That's a notorious area for. And we also showed on this side just all the typical connections that get welded, and some of the repairs that are done that are unauthorized types of repairs, which is, the rust is still in there, and the connections are welded. These last 1 year, 2 years at most, and then they snap again. Plenty of the lead paint still on them, so we actually have a lead stick here to do a lead test on it, but anything that has an orange base is based. And then just how much rot. So if you can come on this side, take a look and see what happens when you just let it sit on the ground or buried into the ground, because sometimes they asphalt it. But we have several types of connections here, and this is a fire escape that came off an elementary school as of this December. So this was actually being used by children, teachers, and the most surprising part of it is firefighters and building inspectors walk this every day in a school building because they get inspected every year. So this is why we want to do this as a show and tell.
Did you come from Massachusetts?
Yeah. But this is just, it's typical of across the country. I see this across the country. This is not just typically here. But, and then from this side we show how easy it is to take the same very piece and just change out the bolts. Silicone shut it. And we left these purposely on to show that they're 50 to 75 years old. But if you leave any of these connections on, now you still have to load test it. This would be considered what's called a spot repair. And if you leave anything old, you have to load test it. If you take those out, as easily as you took these, you take those out, and the rest is clean, you've avoided the load test because you've refurbished it. So spot repairs still force you into a load test.
And
full repairs.
In this particular situation, did they replace the entire fire escape?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
And but you know who brought me to this attention? The facilities guy. Now, this wasn't a violation. This wasn't a fire violation. This wasn't a state code violation. The facilities guy said, I don't think we can fix this. I don't want to fix this. And I'm telling my school to change it out. But this is a 75-year-old plus fire escape in use as of December 19th of this year.
Well, that's one good reason why we're here today.
Well, you had a class. What did you think about the class that you got? Because you actually have to go out in the field and watch some of this stuff. What do you think about it, dragging it in here? And
Yeah, we had Cisco out to our group 3-4 months ago.
Yeah.
Metro West building officials. Great presentation. Following the educational portion, we actually did a site field inspection. And we looked at a building that had actually 3 types of fire escapes, as you recall. We had a balcony, just a single balcony. We had a ground-supported fire escape, and we also had a hanging fire escape.
with cantilever.
Cantilever, correct. And during that inspection, I think one of the fire escapes was basically hanging off the side of the building, and it was a real eye-opener for me. It's the first training that I've received by Fire Escape Services here, which was excellent. And I'm happy to report that has been cited and remedial work is underway as we speak right
Perfect. And again, we found this on the other fire escapes there, on all the 3 that we saw. We found the same exact scenario. So now knowing what the right way to fix something is, what the wrong way to fix something is, because even if it's going to be fixed the wrong way, now we still have to load test it. It may pass a load test that day, but sadly, some of these wells, if the rust stays, are going to pop again within 1 to 3 years. And the cycle on these is 5, so that's why we're trying to avoid welded repairs with rust still in the connection being one of the ways. And now that the EPA is saying that if you got this little orange, you got any lead, you can't weld on fire escapes anymore either. Thank you for doing that piece.
Thank you for the training.
Here, I've taught all the way out to Seattle, Portland, Corpus Christi, Chicago, down to Washington, D.C. And some of the things that you're concerned about, everyone else has the same concerns. And they don't know anything about the fire escapes. So fire escape sort of became like it's sort of like, we call it the foster child of egress. You'll care about a lot of buildings, but the one thing that you sometimes totally forget about is whether or not the second means of egress is going. So you're from Concord, and what's
Brookline, New Hampshire.
Brookline? Any downtown fire escape to your knowledge?
We do. We have it on our town hall. We have an outdoor fire escape, the old type. It's not covered or
Right.
anything like that. There are a couple of buildings in town that do have, they're
Balconies
old,
and ladders, maybe?
well, they're old farmhouse type buildings that were built into apartments now, and they do have a fire escape going out. They are covered. They have a roof over them, but they're not enclosed, that
Right.
sort of thing.
Open to the weather all the
Open
time.
to the weather, and that's a big thing.
Now, the biggest issue we're gonna have, and now with Concord, you've got a great big downtown that has had a lot of buildings change over, and some of these fire escapes just disappeared. But then there's always some buildings that are older, 50, 75 years old, that they still have fire escapes as the means of egress on the back.
Right,
And-
we've got a lot of buildings that have the old metal style fire escapes going up the back of them. The type where you go out and then the counterweight
Yeah,
lifts it.
they're called cantilever balanced stairs.
Right, and we've got a lot of those, but, don't really know a whole lot about them, structurally.
Can you recall the last time somebody asked you to inspect one, or what the norm is? Even, where you would find a code that would force somebody in that city to inspect that fire escape or repair it, unless it's just flagrant, like
Well, I know there's
smashed by a truck or something?
I know there's some things in NFPA 101, and I know there's an ANSI standard that covers fire escapes, but I don't really know a whole lot. That's why I'm here today.
Well, there's a lot of fire escape codes out there, believe it or not, and they always come down to two paragraphs. One paragraph says very generally, in all the states, whether it be the state building code or a fire code, it says all fire escapes must be structurally sound at all times. Another code says you must maintain your fire escape at all times, which means keep it painted, and that's it. Every code in the United States, you have to sort of take off from there. So if it ain't something that's on the forefront, if it doesn't have a schedule, like sprinklers have a schedule. I want this building scheduled every year. Fire escapes are not on that type of a schedule. Elevators are on a schedule. Give me an elevator test every 2 years for you guys?
It's every year or two. Yeah.
Every year or two?
Yeah.
Otherwise, shut down your building.
Right.
So between sprinklers, alarms, God forbid a central station is not working, this building is down. It's shut down until that matter gets quickly resolved.
Right.
Now, all those things that we have, guess what's not on the list, which is what a fire escape is for. A fire escape is made for self-evacuation. It's not something you guys use. It's something you guys need in case of an emergency. Otherwise, you're going in the front door, you're going through all the normal ways. But in case of a bad situation, you know, your guys need to get out. But what it's really made for is if the owners or the tenants in the building can't get out, they're supposed to use the fire escape to self-evacuate. So these things are really made for tenants and for firemen to use in a last-ditch effort when everything else has failed. And yet, for 50 to 75 years, nobody's been watching these.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you don't recall the last time you forced somebody with a violation to fix their fire escape?
This one here, the one at our town hall, I keep on them as far as, we have a slate roof, and all the ice and snow gather right on it, so you can't open that second door from the auditorium.
But it's not on a checklist of any kind as far as the rest of the buildings in your town. You don't have some sort of checklist that says, you know, you keep an eye on these.
It's basically me watching it, and if I see something happens, I gotta get on somebody to get that cleaned
And
off.
so you're the watchdog, and with all the other things going on in town. So what we're gonna talk about today is basically what you guys are forced into is that you have so much on your plate, and fire escapes have been ignored for 75 years before you anyway, so it didn't come to you as one of the main things, like, you know, radon gas, you know, is important, you know, sprinklers are very important, and, you know, structural adequacy of a roof during snow loads. I mean, you guys have all these disaster things that you always concern yourself about, and yet fire escapes is one of those that should get the attention, but here's the reason why it's not getting the attention is it very rarely gets used. It's like a parachute in my plane. It's like, I hope it works. But because the activity of a fire is so low that all of a sudden, you know, even though you've got a hand grenade there, you never get to use it anyway. So it's basically, you let sleeping dogs lie, years go by, and it never really gets tested. So, but we're trying to tell you that now it's 50 to 75 years later, and these fire escapes have been basically rotting themselves.
So Lewis is here from the city of Somerville. He's one of the building inspectors. He says he's with the multifamily side of things. Anything that's related to fire escape, Lewis here is the one that's doing that. So we actually pulled this off of somewhere in Massachusetts, off an elementary school, as of December 19th of this year. So this was actually being used by school children of kindergarten all the way to 8th grade into a schoolyard. And the question that I have, and I show this to a lot of times, this is our first showing ever of such a piece to help you really bring it home, is that school children were going up and down this every day. So with the teachers, administrators, but also every year a firefighter and or a building inspector doing their yearly inspection walked through this fire escape. And there was never a violation. The only reason I replaced this fire escape is because the facilities guy said, I don't think you can fix this anymore. Can you remove it? So we came out and we basically showed, you see, look how much rust. Look how much, you know, you can put the false, see the nut is still there, but look, it's missing. So, and if you look at here, see this is a notorious area for rotting through. You can put your fingers through in a lot, you know, and a lot of times, whenever you get somebody that gets one of these fire escapes, the first thing that shows up is a welding guy. And welding guys, I don't know if you know, but the EPA doesn't let you weld on fire escapes anymore because you're burning lead. This orange base is a lead base. And so with a lead base, what you have is the EPA says you can't put a flame to anything that's lead. You can't do it in your house, you can't do it outside. So now, but this is typical of the way they would fix this fire escape. The first thing they would do is weld the nose, but leave the rust. If there was a lot of rust in there, they did what's done in here. Because I doctored this up, so this wasn't 100% this way. I doctored it up a little bit to show the wrong way to fix it. They take a little piece of steel, drop it in there, and they weld it here and weld it here, but leave the rust. As soon as the rust starts growing, what's going to happen is it's going to tear all these welds. Anybody that has welding experience knows if you leave the rust in place, 1 to 3 years from now, it's going to break, it'll detach. But the cycle on this is every 5 years. So here they are doing repairs, emergency repairs we call them, that may last a year or two, but it's going to last for 5. And so this is what's happening out there. There are a lot of people that sometimes don't even have the skill to weld, that are welding. Whereas anybody who doesn't have the skill to weld but has the skill to put in a bolt, this is professional. This is incorrect. But it's the same guy. If you make the same guy who works for an ironwork company, not weld it, but just change the bolt, and you see that on that example over there, nobody with limited skills has to weld any of this. If they just change those bolts, the fire escape doesn't need to be load tested because you change the bolts. So we thought we'd bring this out to show this takes 25 to 50 years of growth. When it's a half inch, it's almost 50 years of unchecked growth. 50 years that this thing has been used to basically have children go up and down, school teachers, and you know what happens as soon as somebody hurts themselves? Guess who they call? Guess whose fault it is that somebody got hurt on a fire escape?
I remember most of the time I was installed this.
Oh, this was installed 75 years ago. If my kid fell on this fire escape, you know who and this fire escape was in your city. You know the first one they hang is the inspector, because you're supposed to have caught this.
Well, most of the time when we're going through the inspection, that is what we request. It's in something we have as a policy to request an engineer go out.
Correct.
And work together with the installer to see what is missing and what pieces need to be replaced.
Right. What happens, and that's a very good thing, what we're going to teach today is when an engineer does go out and notices this, he'll create a nice little beautiful letter. The installer goes out without that letter. The installer goes out and fixes it the way he wants. The installer then paints this and puts as much silicone over it as he can. Then the engineer who was supposed to be overseeing it, guess when he gets called in? Inspector training. Here we are in Lowell, Massachusetts. Bob, say your last name. Marsilia. Italiano? Si. We're here looking at, he's the building commissioner in the city of Lowell, and we have a fire escape right down by our feet. What's the greatest thing about this is we're going to be able to see all the rust in the connections. We're going to see all original hardware and squares. We're going to basically, he had a class today, and what we're basically looking at is a fire escape that no more paint is on it. So this is a perfect one because I can get my nose right into it. And this is a perfect example of everything that can go wrong with a fire escape. Let's talk about this one. And then we're going to go look at these other ones and a big monster that's on the back. So this may be a 10 to 15 minute video, but what is on here works there. So let's take a look. More paint and rust or more rust and paint? So that's all you need. Let's say they knew you were coming, Bob, and they painted this thing 100%. What are you looking for next?
The original hardware.
Original hardware. So let's show people what original hardware is. This is a square bolt. Square bolts. Square bolts. And some of these, so now let's stay underneath here before we get on that side, Bob. How about grating? Any popped grating of the spacers?
Yeah, the spacers are missing.
So what that means is when a fireman or a person steps and your leg goes through that, you get locked. You can't save yourself because now you're trapped with a bear trap. How about rusty tears? Any rusty tears indicating that water's getting into the connection?
Yeah, right there in front of
How about cement blowout into the back?
you. Yeah, you can see that too.
See cement blowout. Okay, let's take a look. Any damage from a truck or anything? Any bends on this fire escape?
So
Okay.
it looks like that might have been hit.
Got hit. Let's take a look at is it square heads or rivets on the supports? Are those original or have they been switched out in the past 50 to 75 years?
No, the originals.
Original. To let this fire escape rust this much, how many years? To get 100% of your paint off your fire escape?
25 at least.
At least 25. Is there any paint that you can still see left? But even though there's no more paint on this, does this thing, which is older than 1978, have lead still in it?
Yes.
So it still has lead. Let's look at all the rust in between the connections. All this rust. Let's look at your treads. Missing spacers?
Yes.
And let's look over here underneath. Better before you climb up above. If I had my hammer, I'd do a hammer test. Any rust in any of the connections?
Rust in all of them.
Rust in all of them. The bulge. You can see all the bulges, right?
Yeah.
Is there any of them that if you were looking up straight up, can you see the sky if you look straight up on some of these? You look over here. You see that one right there? Can you look straight up?
Yeah.
How about this one over here? See all the rust? Any of these bolts that are holding as best they can, any of them totally gone? Are they all suspect in your mind?
All suspect, yeah.
Would you allow any of these to be welded and remain in place? Because that's a typical repair.
This has from the top 1/4-inch gap.
Yep. Now let's see how it lands on the ground. Is this all rotting on the ground?
It's all rotted out on that side especially. The channel is completely rotted out.
So the channel is completely gone over there? Okay. So, and how much rust? 1/4-inch every 25 years. How long you got of rust there?
Well, that's 75 years of rust there.
75 years. All these treads are 1/4, 3/8, 1/2 inch. If I was to stomp along on these, you think some of these would give way? Some of them have been patched with some welded bars. This is a typical repair when these flats give out.
Yes.
Lots of bends and smashes. I'll go slowly up this
fire escape. I won't go too far, but you got enough evidence here that this is a perfect candidate of how bad things get when you just leave it alone. Have your inspectors ever walked down these alleyways?
Yes.
And why didn't they write this one up?
Well, we haven't had the program yet. But we have.
Maybe they did and nobody paid attention. Maybe they didn't know what to look for. And if it ain't broke, why fix it? There's also other reasons too. It's just it's not the priority. People think these are great. They've always been great. That nobody's ever fell 25 years ago. Nobody fell 50 years ago. And they think that these things are indestructible. But now this is what I call a hidden time bomb. This is a grenade with a pin already pulled out of it. A fireman or somebody coming out of that top is going to fall down these stairs and get hurt or jammed or stuck.
Yeah.
So this is part of the 101.3. All exterior steel or wooden stairs.